Have you ever heard of Operation Nordwind? No? Well, let me tell you this. It was the last major German attack on the Western Front of World War II. And strangely enough, I'm sure you've heard of the Ardennes Offensive, right? This offensive, Operation Nordwind, was almost just as large as the Ardennes Offensive. And it's not very well known. So, let's talk about this forgotten World War II operation. Operation Nordwind, the last major German attack on the Western Front of World War II. Keep watching. Good to have you back on the channel. If you're new, I'm Stefan, I'm a Dutch history teacher. I like making videos about history, and preferably I do that on location. And I'm now on location in the French city of Colmar. And one of the German attacks that was part of Operation Nordwind took place from this region. So, let's discuss this. But before we do that, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, please do so, and also hit that notification so you will be notified when another video comes out. Mid-December, the Germans launched a surprise counterattack in the Ardennes, Operation Wacht am Rhein, also known as the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler's idea was to push for Antwerp and to deliver the Allies a fatal blow. On December 16th, around 2,000 German artillery guns opened fire on the American positions in the Ardennes. The Allied soldiers were in shock and awe. Because of the bombardment, field telephone lines were cut and the Allied communication had broken down, causing great confusion among the Allies. German paratroopers were dropped behind enemy lines, which increased the confusion, and on top of that, German infiltration patrols dressed in American uniforms and driving captured American vehicles tried to secure the Meuse bridges. Although most of these units didn't come far, it caused total panic among the Allies. Over the course of the month, the weather shifted in favor of the Allies. With clear weather now, the Allied planes could now attack the German columns. Hitler stubbornly refused to abandon the operation. Early January, the German Luftwaffe carried out one large-scale attack. The Allies lost planes. The attackers lost more planes. The Germans couldn't replace their losses and the Allies could. In January, the German panzers began to run out of fuel. That was the end of the battle, which had resulted in a large-scale defeat for Germany. Operation Nordwind followed on the heels of the Ardennes Offensive, and two German army groups took part in this offensive. I'm talking about Johannes von Blaskowitz's Army Group G and Army Group Upper Rhine. It was a newly formed army group that was led by SS Reichsführer Heinrich Himmler himself. Let's take a look at the Allies. This was a sector of General Jacob Devers' 6th Army Group, consisting of the US 7th under the command of General Alexander M. Patch and the French 1st under General Jean de Lattre de Tantigny. Devers' army had landed in southern France during Operation Dragoon and advanced to the Rhine from the late summer onwards and was the first to reach the Rhine. Supreme Commander Eisenhower forbade him to cross the river, since the Germans of the 19th Army were still in charge of the pocket west of the river around the city of Colmar. Furthermore, Eisenhower requested division after division from him to reinforce the American troops in the Ardennes when the Germans launched an offensive there. Towards the end of December, 6 weak divisions were spread out over a 126-mile front from Sarreguemines to Lautenburg to Strasbourg. Just before midnight, on the 31st of December 1944, the German offensives took place. Operation Nordwind had kicked off, as historian Robert Citino puts it. A German army that seemed all but finished somehow managed to rise up for one last laid encore. The time, we might say, was 5 minutes after midnight. The Germans attacked towards the Valley of the Saar and soon ran into stiff American resistance. After 3 days of bloody fighting, the Germans had only made a small dent in the American line. Further east, the Germans had more success. South of Beach, through the low Vosges mountains, 4 Volksgrenadier divisions attacked. They penetrated the weak American front and isolated and reduced its strong points, fending off counterattacks. They went 10 miles further south through the Vosges mountains towards the crucial mountain exits. The American commanders patch endeavors, they responded fast by transferring units to the areas that were attacked by the Germans to contain the bridge, and they managed to stop the Germans before they reached the mountain exits. On the 5th of January 1945, a lull had fallen over the front. The battle, however, was not over, as the troops that were led by Heinrich Himmler himself, Army Group Upper Rhine, attacked on different parts of the front line. North of Gamsheim, the Germans crossed the river. Although it was a ragtag of a force, it did manage to drive away the Americans and establish a bridgehead. On January 7th, the Germans attacked from the Colmar salient heading towards Strasbourg. Planning to punch through the French First Army 12 miles from the city, the German attack came to a halt. On the same day, Blaskowitz ordered his forces to attack on a broad front from the Lauter River between Wissembourg and Lauterbourg. None of the German panzer units was at full strength. The US front here was nothing more than a few rifle battalions that caved in almost right after the German attack commenced. The Germans moved to the south and the west, making 10 miles in 2 days. Their attack got delayed because of minefields and bad weather, not because of the American resistance. The Americans took up positions between the villages of Hatteren and Rittershofen. Interesting enough, the American defenders, they made use of casemates that were previously part of the French Maginot Line. And because the Battle of the Bulge was in full swing, the Americans couldn't receive reinforcements. 10 days of bitter fighting followed, and because it was such a flat terrain, American GIs referred to it as a pool table, and the American artillery wrought havoc among the German attackers. The Germans, they used flamethrowers to reduce the casemates. As temperatures went below zero and snow began to fall, men froze, fought and died on both sides. With a 30% casualty rate, the Americans did manage to hold their lines, and the momentum of the German attack began to die down. German high command didn't stop, as on the 16th of January, German panzers smashed through the US line north of Hagenau Forest. At the same time, the Germans broke out from the Gamsheim-Hellesheim bridgehead, trying to trap the American forces. The Americans therefore retreated from the Hatten and Rittershofen villages. By now, the Battle of the Ardennes was over, and the Western Allies, they received reinforcements. As the Germans made another attack on the 24th of January, the Americans managed to stop it. And so, Operation Northwind came to an end. It had inflicted heavy casualties on both sides. The Americans, they had 14,000 casualties, and the Germans 23,000. For the Germans, this was a tactical victory. However, it changed nothing. As historian Robert Citino says, the Northwind offensives of January 1945 saw the Wehrmacht doing the one thing it knew how to do. In its last great offensive, fighting within the narrow confines of Alsace, a cockpit for Prussian and German armies for centuries, the army of the new superpower gave it all that it could handle. Big shout out to my patrons, and a special thanks to Philip Jordan, Jakob Mosland, Nick Terranova, Haley Berry, Mark Little-Hale, Janusz Dojonkiewicz, Joanne, Justin Trabell, Peter King, Tanya Dixie, Henry Clarkson, Rob Park, Andrea Martic, Ilya Yud, Fernando Lopez Ojeda, and Mike West. If you'd like to know more about the liberation of Western Europe, you want to have the full overview, click right here. Please consider becoming a Patreon. The links are in the description. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.